There's a corner of reality where the extraordinary meets the unexplained. It's a space documented not in myths or urban legends, but in files, reports, and testimonies. Official records written by people who swore they saw something impossible. What lies hidden in these archives are more than just accounts. They're fragments of a reality that feels too strange, too chilling, and yet too real to ignore. Imagine this: a streak of green fire slicing across the sky, moving faster than any plane could. A military officer, shaken, writing a memo about lights that defied the laws of physics. A child's scream echoing in the dark as a chair moves, on its own. These aren't campfire tales. They're official investigations into phenomena that refuse to be explained away. Tonight, we're not just stepping into the paranormal. We're diving into the documented, public records that tell stories of things that should not exist, yet somehow do. The Green Fireballs. On December 5th, 1948, two separate flight crews, one civilian and one military, witnessed a green ball of fire tearing through the night sky near Albuquerque. But it wasn't a lone occurrence. Over the next few years, sightings of these green fireballs multiplied, often near sensitive military sites like Los Alamos, the birthplace of the atomic bomb. These weren't just stories whispered around campfires. The U.S. Air Force launched Project Twinkle in 1949 to investigate the phenomenon. Observation posts with specialized cameras were set up, hoping to catch these lights in action. But despite extensive efforts, the results were inconclusive. Speculation ran wild. Some thought the fireballs were Soviet spy devices. Others believed they were extraterrestrial in origin. Dr. Lincoln La Paz, a respected meteor expert, suggested they weren't natural phenomena, noting their peculiar behavior and frequency near top-secret installations. The green fireballs remain an enigma. Were they a new type of natural phenomenon, secret military projects, or something not of this world? Decades later, the mystery endures, leaving us to wonder what was really lighting up the New Mexico skies. The Enfield Poltergeist, 1977. It started with a noise. In August 1977, Peggy Hodgson, a single mother living in a modest council house in Enfield, England, heard a loud crash from her daughter's bedroom. When she went to check, she found the furniture moved, but her children swore they hadn't touched it. That was just the beginning. Soon the family began experiencing strange occurrences almost nightly. Knocking on walls, objects flying across rooms, and chairs tipping over on their own. 11-year-old Janet seemed to be the focus of the disturbances. She claimed an invisible force would pull at her clothing and even throw her out of bed. The activity became so intense that Peggy turned to the police for help. One of the responding officers, WPC Carolyn Heaps, provided a written statement saying she had seen a chair slide across the floor, unaided. She checked for wires or any explanation, but found nothing. This wasn't a case of frightened children or hysterical parents. Authorities had witnessed it too. Word spread quickly, drawing journalists and paranormal investigators to the Hodgson home. Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair from the Society for Psychical Research spent months documenting the activity. They recorded furniture moving, unexplained voices, and even levitation. Perhaps the most chilling evidence was Janet speaking in a deep, gravelly voice, claiming to be a man named Bill. Recordings of her speaking as Bill showed vocal patterns inconsistent with her age or gender. Not everyone believed the Hodgson family. Some skeptics pointed out that certain events only happened when witnesses weren't looking, and even Janet admitted to fabricating a few incidents to test the investigators. Still, the volume of recorded activity and eyewitness accounts makes it hard to dismiss the case entirely. the Enfield Poltergeist leaves a strange impression. On one hand, it's easy to see how fear and attention could feed into the chaos, especially with children involved. But then there's the physical evidence, the chair sliding, the voice recordings, the sheer number of witnesses. Even if some of it was exaggerated, there's a core to this story that doesn't fit neatly into any explanation. Whatever was haunting that house, it left behind more than just questions. It left a sense of unease that lingers to this day. The Rendlesham Forest Incident, 1980. In the early hours of December the 26th, 1980, a strange light descended over the dense woods of Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England, near the RAF Woodbridge Air Base, controlled by the US Air Force. It wasn't just a fleeting flash in the sky. It was an event that would draw military personnel into one of the most compelling UFO mysteries of the 20th century. Security officers on patrol saw an intense light descending into the forest. Thinking it might be a downed aircraft, they ventured into the woods. What they found wasn't wreckage. Instead, they described a glowing object, triangular, metallic, and emitting beams of colored light. The object moved silently, then ascended into the sky with incredible speed, leaving them stunned. 2 nights later, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt led a team into the forest to investigate further. Armed with radiation detectors and recording devices, they followed strange lights through the trees. Halt's audio recording from that night captured his team's observations. Lights moving erratically, a glowing red orb splitting into smaller pieces, and beams of light shining down from above. Radiation readings in the area were higher than normal, adding to the mystery. Halt documented the events in a memorandum, now famously known as the Halt Memo, sent to the British Ministry of Defence. He described unexplained lights and their movements in detail. Despite the memo, the Ministry of Defence concluded that the incident posed no threat to national security and declined to investigate further. The official stance only deepened the intrigue. Skeptics have pointed to mundane explanations. The Orfordness Lighthouse's beams, celestial objects, or even misinterpretations of nearby military exercises. Yet the witnesses were trained military personnel, hardly the type to mistake stars for something otherworldly. The radiation readings and detailed descriptions also make it difficult to dismiss entirely. What happened in Rendlesham Forest? The military's involvement, the detailed eyewitness accounts, and the physical evidence all point to something extraordinary. But what stands out the most is the way it was handled. A memo, a few brief investigations, and then silence. Whether it was an elaborate hoax, a misidentified event, or an encounter with something we can't explain, the Rendlesham Forest Incident lingers in that gray space between the known and the unknown, refusing to be neatly boxed away. The Hexham Heads, 1971. It began innocently enough, a discovery in a garden that would spiral into one of the strangest cases of alleged paranormal activity in England. In 1971, 2 brothers, Colin and Leslie Robson, unearthed 2 small carved stone heads while digging in their backyard in Hexham, Northumberland. What followed was a series of events so bizarre that even skeptics were left scratching their heads. The heads, rough and palm-sized, featured crude but distinct facial features. One appeared to resemble a male figure, and the other female. The Robson family initially thought little of their find, treating the heads as curiosities. But soon after they brought them inside, their home became a hotspot of unexplained phenomena. Objects began to move on their own. Doors slammed shut without warning. Cold drafts swept through rooms, and the family's children reported feeling watched. The strangest incident came when a neighbor claimed to have seen a half-man, half-animal creature described as a large wolf, lurking near the Robson home. Police were even called when the disturbances escalated, though no logical explanation was ever found. The Hexham Heads caught the attention of Dr. Anne Ross, a Celtic scholar who suggested the artifacts might be connected to ancient Celtic traditions. Ross kept the heads in her home, but she too experienced unsettling phenomena, including sightings of a shadowy, wolf-like figure. The theory that the heads were cursed or imbued with ancient energy gained traction, especially given their resemblance to Celtic designs. In 1977, a man named Desmond Craigie came forward, claiming he had carved the heads in the 1950s as toys for his children. This revelation cast doubt on the idea that the heads were ancient relics. However, Craigie's claim didn't explain the paranormal activity reported by multiple families and even neighbors. There's something about the Hexham Heads that doesn't sit easily with explanations. Whether they were cursed relics or just odd artifacts caught in the middle of a strange set of events, their story feels like it dips a toe into something we don't fully understand. The idea that two simple carvings could spark so much chaos makes me wonder if some objects carry more weight than we realize, or if we're just really good at finding patterns where there are none. Either way, the Hexham Heads leave an eerie question lingering in the air. What power, if any, do things from the past still hold over us? The Dyatlov Pass Incident, 1959. In the frigid wilderness of the Ural Mountains, 9 hikers set out on what was supposed to be a challenging yet routine trek in late January 1959. Led by Igor Dyatlov, the group from the Ural Polytechnic Institute was experienced, prepared, and well-equipped. But by the end of February, all 9 were dead, and their story had transformed into one of the most haunting mysteries in modern history. When the hikers failed to return, search teams were dispatched. On February 26th, rescuers found their campsite, specifically their tent. It was ripped open from the inside, abandoned in a hurry, with shoes, jackets, and essential gear left behind. Strange footprints led away from the site, heading into the snowy wilderness. The first 5 bodies were discovered near the tree line. They were lightly dressed, some wearing only socks, as if they had fled into the snow in a panic. The remaining 4 weren't found until months later, buried in a ravine under several feet of snow. These bodies told an even stranger story. While some had died of hypothermia, others bore injuries so severe they were compared to those sustained in a car crash. Yet there were no external wounds to match the internal trauma. What could have caused such chaos? Theories range from the plausible to the bizarre. Some suggested an avalanche had forced the group to flee their tent. Others pointed to secret Soviet military tests, with high-powered weapons or radiation exposure causing their deaths. Then there are the wilder ideas: a Yeti attack, extraterrestrial interference, or even a supernatural entity. The injuries, especially the crushed ribs and missing tongue of one hiker, only deepen the mystery. The Soviet investigation wrapped up quickly, declaring the cause of death to be an unknown compelling force. While this explanation was intentionally vague, it left room for speculation and fueled decades of debate. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the case, ultimately blaming an avalanche, but many experts and enthusiasts remain unconvinced. The Dyatlov Pass incident feels like a puzzle with missing pieces. What haunts me most isn't just the deaths themselves, but the sheer strangeness of it all. How experienced hikers, prepared for the harsh conditions, could meet such a terrifying, chaotic end. There's something unsettling about how weird it all feels. The panic, the injuries, the desperate attempts to survive. Whatever happened on that mountainside, it left behind more questions than answers, and a sense of unease that refuses to fade, even decades later. The Flatwoods Monster, 1952. It was September 12th, 1952, in the small town of Flatwoods, West Virginia, when the quiet hills became the backdrop for one of the most bizarre UFO encounters in history. It started innocently enough. Two brothers, Edward and Fred May, saw a fiery object streak across the evening sky before appearing to crash on a nearby hill. What they found when they went to investigate was something far stranger than they could have imagined. The May brothers, along with their friend Tommy Heyer, grabbed a flashlight and headed toward the crash site. They were soon joined by a few locals, including their mother, Kathleen May, and Eugene Lemon, a National Guardsman. As they climbed the hill, they saw a pulsing red light in the distance. When they got closer, Lemon shined his flashlight toward the object, and what the beam revealed sent the group running in terror. They described a creature about 10 feet tall, with glowing eyes and a spade-shaped head. Its lower half seemed metallic or mechanical, with pleated folds like a skirt. The creature hissed and glided toward them, leaving behind a noxious odor that many in the group later claimed made them physically ill. The group ran back to town, visibly shaken. Some developed throat irritation, nausea, and other symptoms, which they blamed on the strange mist near the creature. Word spread quickly, and law enforcement searched the area the next day. While they didn't find the creature, they did report strange skid marks and a gummy residue at the site. Skeptics argue the whole thing was a case of misidentification. The fiery object, they say, was likely a meteor, and the monster could have been nothing more than a barn owl perched on a tree branch, its features exaggerated by fear and flashlight beams. The noxious smell, possibly the natural odors of nearby vegetation or animals. But for those who were there, those explanations feel far too simple. The Flatwoods Monster is one of those stories that stays with you, not because of what it was, but because of how vividly it was described. The fear and sickness the witnesses reported make it hard to write off as a simple misidentification. Was it an alien, a natural phenomenon, or something else entirely? Whatever it was, it left a mark on those who saw it, and on anyone who's heard the story since. The Bell Witch Haunting, 1817 to 1821. If you're interested, you can watch the full story in one of my videos. I'm going to link it in the description. The following narration of events is a very condensed summary. In the early 1800s, the Bell family settled in the quiet farmlands of Adams, Tennessee, hoping for a peaceful life. Instead, their home became the center of what is now one of the most infamous hauntings in American history. It all began innocently enough, if you can call it that. John Bell, the head of the family, claimed he saw a strange creature in his cornfield, something with the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit. He shot at it, but it disappeared. Not long after, things took a darker turn. Mysterious knocking sounds began to echo through the house, and objects seemed to move on their own. Bed sheets were pulled from sleeping children, and Betsy, John's youngest daughter, was targeted with scratches and hair pulling by an unseen force. The situation escalated when the entity began to speak. Introducing itself as Kate, it claimed to be the spirit of a deceased neighbor with a grudge against John Bell. Kate didn't hold back. She openly admitted she wanted him dead. At the same time, she disapproved of Betsy's engagement to a local boy and went out of her way to harass the poor girl. Kate wasn't a subtle spirit. She quoted scripture, gossiped about the neighbors, and sang hymns to Lucy Bell, John's wife. She seemed to have a soft spot for Lucy, even bringing her fresh fruit, but her torment of John was relentless. People came from miles around to witness the phenomenon, and many left convinced they'd encountered something otherworldly. John Bell's health rapidly declined under Kate's torment, He experienced episodes of paralysis and eventually became bedridden. In December 1820, he was found dead, and a mysterious vial of black liquid was discovered near his body. Kate gleefully claimed responsibility, saying she had poisoned him. It's chilling to think this could be the first documented case of a haunting leading to someone's death. After John's death, Kate's visits lessened, though she promised to return in 7 years. True to her word, she made a brief reappearance in 1828, but it wasn't long before she vanished for good, or at least, that's what people hope. The Bell Witch legend lives on, immortalized in books, films, and the eerie Bell Witch Cave. The Bell Witch story feels like one of those tales that's just too big to be entirely true, but too detailed to be entirely made up. Maybe it's a mix of both, a kernel of truth wrapped up in years of embellishment and retelling. Still, there's something unsettling about how personal this haunting seemed. It wasn't just random chaos. It had purpose, anger, even malice. Whether Kate was a ghost, a product of hysteria, or something else entirely, the way she singled out John Bell and Betsy makes this case feel deeply eerie, and honestly, a little terrifying. And that's it. 7 eerie, fascinating cases, pulled straight from the pages of history and official records. Whether it's a malevolent witch haunting a family in Tennessee, mysterious green fireballs lighting up the skies, or military officials chasing glowing objects through the woods, these stories remind us how little we truly understand about the world around us. It's easy to dismiss these accounts as myths, misunderstandings, or even outright fabrications. But the thing that keeps them alive is the same thing that makes us turn on an extra light before bed, or listen a little closer to the sound of the wind at night. The possibility that there's more out there than we know. Thanks for venturing into the unknown with me. If you think there are other public records or stories like these worth exploring, let me know. Until next time, keep one eye open, just in case.